Welcome to Leadership Luminaries Lounge with Kerry and Peggy O'Neill, a podcast about the connection of leadership, philosophy, practice, and impact on society. Get ready to be illuminated.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Leadership Luminaries Lounge with myself, Kerry Bass, and Peggy O'Neill, my co-host. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. Normally, Peggy and I spend a bit more time talking about more strategic issues. But today, we're really going to get into a more tactical focus on how to use communications and podcasts to be able to get your message out as a leader. And our special guest today is Mr. Junaid Ahmed. And I'm going to give just a little bit of introduction to him. He's the founder of Humble Zone and creator of Homestudiomastery. And he designed, which is designed to teach you how to build your home studio. He gave me some specific advice too after meeting him and being a guest on his show, which was very, very helpful. Has over 2 decades of video production experience and designing websites and apps focused on systematic process and seamless user experience. He provides podcasters, speakers, and content creators with a comprehensive plan for their studio equipment, lighting, and layout. And he enables video creators to create effortless content in a comfortable and impressive home studio setting. He's the author of Mastering iPhone Video Production and the host of Hacks and Hobbies podcast, which I was a guest on too. Frequently speaks at national events such as Podfest and multiple virtual summits. Again, thank you for being our guest today, Junaid, and tell us a little bit more about how you got into this. And also, I wanted to make a point of, we usually have kind of a similar background, but I wanted him to show his background because I think it's very insightful for you to be able to get some more techniques and hacks for yourself.
Well, Kerry and Peggy, thank you so much for inviting me to be a guest on here and talk about my expertise and where I come from. And I'm just honored to be here, So where do I come from? I'm a tech enthusiast. I've been, tinkering with tech for over 30 years, playing with cameras and photography equipment for a long time. And when the pandemic hit, I was like, how can I show up online? Now, it wasn't for the reason of showing up online. It was more of solving a problem that I had myself. Now, rewind to 2018. I had just finished listening to Gary Vaynerchuk's book, Crushing It, and he says, hey, just document your journey. And I had been wanting to start my podcast since I had wanted to start my podcast or restart my podcast. Since 2012, we had a smaller podcast, which lasted for about 4 episodes. And I wanted to restart and go back to it. And when I listened to this, Gary saying, hey, just document your journey, I was like, what journey would I be documenting? And it just so happened I had finished my beekeeping course. And I was just going to be, getting into beekeeping. I was like, oh, perfect. I could be documenting about my beekeeping. And the reason the podcast is called Hacks and Hobbies was because, well, every week at work, I talk about a different hobby and different passion and different thing. And they were like, hey, what's your new hobby this week? So I was like, hey, that's a pretty cool thing. And hacks, life hacks, we're always implementing in our lives to get further and further and move forward. So that became the name of the podcast after like 3 episodes. But fast forward, around this same time, my podcasting journey, I was also walking around with my phone camera at different events. And this specific event was a LinkedIn Live local or LinkedIn local event where the hosts of the event saw me walking around with this camera gimbal and my phone and taking photos and taking videos. And he's like, wow, that's pretty cool. Could you talk about mobile video on the next LinkedIn local event? I was like, sure. So I put this whole thing together where I talked about it. I was very nervous on stage, and he's like, hey, let me help you out. And he was up on stage asking me questions, and I would answer them. almost like pre-podcast interview style. And from that came out the book Mastering iPhone Video Production. Now, fast forward to and the next year, I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. I've got the booklet. I want to create a course around it. Now I'm trying to create a course and I have the video gear and I know all the things to do behind the camera. I set up a little space in my basement. Took me about 2 hours just at the lighting camera. But when I stepped in front of the camera, crickets. I didn't know where to start. I didn't have a story to tell. I was like, whoa, what are you supposed to do again? Because
Right.
I know the technology,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
behind it all the time. Like, wow, this is hard stuff. Right. So that basically I pulled back and I'm like, well, you know what? Let me just continue the podcast. And I was interviewing about 2 to 3 guests every day.
Yeah.
Fast forward to 2020, I was like, okay, now is the time. I got a job that was 100% remote. I could work from home. I spent more time on the grass. You know what? You know how they say grass is greener on the other side? Well,
Always.
that's mainly because of the perspective that you see. You don't see the holes when you're looking down. But the other thing is the grass is green on the other side is because they're watering that grass, they're nurturing. So I started spending that
That's a great
time on my
distinction. I've
office,
got to emphasize it's a great distinction.
right? Yeah. So I started spending more time in my office and I'm like, okay, now that I'm spending more time here, I can actually make a difference. And I
Mm.
started putting pieces together. And so for 6 months, people kept seeing, why is your camera different today? And they kept seeing the changes come over and over and over. And they started asking me, why does your camera or does your video look so clean? Why do you sound so sharp? And I started telling people, this is what I'm doing with this stuff. It's like, oh my God, you should do consultancy around this space. You should do group coaching around this space. It's like, oh, I never thought of this because I come from a web design technology background, and that's something that I wanted to push on, sell as a service. I didn't even see that this is something that people would want. And that's how I got into home studio mastery, and that's what I do now.
Wow, that's an incredible story. I love how you were doing what you're passionate about, and then ideas would come to you to how to expand that. That's a great story.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. It's wonderful to be with you, Junaid. Um, so since we are the Leadership Luminaries Lounge, how are you finding that leaders in organizations are using what you know, your knowledge, or how do you work with leaders? And yeah, so how are leaders using
So
working with you, and
yeah,
how do they use that?
so one of the things that leaders already have a skill that a lot of people don't is their ability to tell a message and deliver it with clarity. They know how to speak, they know how to lead a team, they know how to get that message across. But a lot of the time we're stuck with technology that's a little older on our laptops, on our videos. So they're not an expert in that space. So I come in and I just walk them through a few different things, get a good microphone, get some good lighting, and make sure there's little to no echo when you're speaking because people will pay more attention to your audio than your competitors. So those are few tips that I help them with. And if that's too much, then I'll go in deeper conversations and go even, step by step on what it is that they need to do with their room setup, with their spaces to show up with more impact.
Junaid, I remember when you and I had our first conversation, and afterwards, interviewing for your podcast, and you gave me some insights after that, and about lighting and those kind of things. I said, "Oh, geez, I'd never thought about that before." And what I really appreciated is you even sent me some notes on Amazon. Here's where you can go get the stuff really cheap. And
Oh,
so I went there, and that was really neat to be able to do that. And so
Yeah.
I appreciate that insights, and I thought that was very gracious of you also to be able to help do that. It's really interesting that this, I don't know whether we should call it an industry or I guess for Peggy and I, it's more of a hobby and extension of our individual practices.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm kind of really getting into this and enjoying the opportunity to be able to interview different people and talk about how to leverage the things that are important to us, but do it in a way that's accessible and consumable for everybody. So thank you again for your generosity and for your insight and knowledge. One of the things I wanted to you to point out though too is that on the Luminaries Lounge, our production assistant, or Maritza Perez, created some duplicate backgrounds, and normally we have our guests use a similar background that we create for that too. But I wanted to not use it with you because you have some very specific insights and also some neat backgrounds in the ways to use your natural background to be able to help in the podcast. Maybe you'd spend a minute to kind of talk about that.
100%. So one of the things that I talk about is bringing your brand into your video, because when people are watching your video, maybe on LinkedIn, maybe on YouTube, Facebook, what have you, when they see that image and the clarity, they're going to stop and look, right? So the more branded it is, the more people will realize, oh my God, you are in Junaid's studio. So if other people are in my studio, like, hey, you're in Junaid's studio, aren't you? Because they know who you are. Now, I wanted to go back a little bit on what you mentioned, bringing and, giving the tips and whatnot. And that actually comes from a very powerful book called The Go-Giver by Bob Berg. He has 5 laws that he talks about. And these are actually the 5 laws of stratospheric success, right? So the number 1 law is the law of value. Your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. And I figured the more value I provide, it doesn't even matter if I get paid or not. I just want to make sure that everybody has access to the tools that are already available. There's tons of people talking about this stuff on YouTube and Instagram and whatnot. And if I am able to get them closer to helping them build up their influence and build up their authority through better video, then why can't I? So some of the things I love to, so the reason I have a multiple camera angle on my studio space is, well, I want to show people what it's going to look like when they spend time in setting up their own spaces.
So I'm going to interrupt you because I am you're talking to somebody who knows nothing, almost. So when you say multi-camera, would you explain that? Because I don't know what that
100%.
is.
So right now we're just using a single camera. And let's say if you bring in a PowerPoint, that would be a secondary camera, right, that you're bringing in. But when I talk about multi-camera, I literally have another camera here that shows you, hey, this is an actual room that I'm sitting inside of with lights and everything. And here's my third camera, which shows you the 2 lights that are shining on me and making a difference. And then I have another top-down camera. Anytime I want to show you, hey, this is a tool I'm using over here. Got my keyboard, my mouse, my microphone right in front of me. So I'm basically showcasing what they would be doing in their space so that they can replicate the look and feel and the image that I'm trying to create. So again, we are visual learners. We love watching movies. We love watching TV shows. So why not visually telling them, hey, this is what's possible and this is how you would do it.
My office is way too messy for me to be able to do that. And Peggy always, when we started out, I mean, she always had just the neatest little nook that she had to always consistently do her video from. So virtual backgrounds are a blessing for me, but I need to get better.
Yeah, well, they don't do great things for one's hair, but oh well. So talking about that there are so many podcasts out there. How, and you might have said some of it, or I think you did, about the branding where people see something and, oh, that must be the Leadership Luminaries Lounge that I just scrolled past. that I want to return to. But can you give, what are some, like, I guess, tips for how do you have a podcast where people really want to watch it all the time, or like, is there a length? So I'm getting at things like those kinds of things. Is there a length? I mean, a length, or what else? How would you tell somebody to create a podcast that everybody wants to watch all the time, hottest thing, that kind of thing? How would you?
Well, the number one thing you want to focus on is you have to be very specific, and you have to be very niche down, the main terms you come. And the reason I say that is because, let's say, when I got into podcasting, I seeked other podcasters. I joined podcasting communities, right? So I learned a ton from them, and I basically gave back in value what I learned and how I can help others. So that's one thing that we're always doing as leaders. The number two thing is you want to also share your growth as a leader, because a lot of times nobody shares those growth secrets, because it almost feels frowned upon to say, hey, I failed at being a leader in here, as opposed to, going deep into the thing that enabled you to be a leader.
Yeah.
You want to talk about those things. Another few SEO, like technical tips would be, be in more places and share the deep concepts that the guests coming on the Leadership Luminaries are sharing, right? So pick out the thing that's the most, basically look at the examples of why do people go and watch movies? Because they have some really good trailers. They leave, those trailers have hooks, and in the ways that when you watch that trailer, you're thinking to myself, oh my God, that is so cool. I wonder what happened in the story. So you wanna create those kind of short clips from these episodes that you're creating, that you're having conversations with, which lead into a hook or lead into a cliffhanger that people are like, oh my God, I want to go see what happened. What was Kerry talking about? What was Peggy talking about on this episode? And the guest that he's sharing, what does that studio look like that he's not using the same background? So then they'll jump on to the YouTube. So again, there's so many different levels and layers. It's mind blowing, right? There's some really cool tools available right now. For example, Cast Magic and capshow.com, which enable you to pull out at least 20 to 25 pieces of content from a single podcast episode. And those could go on your socials. Those could create articles on LinkedIn. You can have a newsletter, the weekly newsletter that goes out talking about, hey, this week we talked to these four people. Go check them out. So you're constantly telling people. I think Russell Brunson says it, or another leader said it, that unless you're sick and tired of your own brand, you're not doing enough to tell people about it.
Okay.
That's great. Well,
Thanks.
Junaid, one of the things that you mentioned tools. Peggy and I just had a couple of episodes where we were talking with some leaders on AI, and I've been having conversations in various places on AI, and particularly around the dangers as well as the opportunities about it. But can you tell us about some of the opportunities and maybe some of the pitfalls that you need to avoid for using AI in production of podcasts and videos in for leaders in this small arenas?
100%. So one thing, the pitfalls of AI, I want to focus first on, because what people are doing, they're simply going into AI or whichever platform they're using, ChatGPT, Meta's AI, which is now built into all of Instagram, WhatsApp, and Facebook.
Isn't that scary? Yes.
But it's scary in one way, but it's almost like they're bringing research tools to your fingertips.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what I use ChatGPT for. So if you're going in there and says, hey, write me an article on blah, 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 well, it's going to grab text from all different sources and put it together. So there's some kind of plagiarism. But what I use AI for is to transcribe or pick out, summarize, pick out themes from episodes that already recorded. So they're grabbing audio that and speech that we've recorded. So we're not going outside. We're focusing on, hey, take a look at this body of text. What are the themes that you're getting out of here? What are some bullet points? What are some hooks that we can create from this body of text? So now, because it has the intelligence of some sort, it can pull out and summarize really quickly and give you back that data. So that's where I'm using AI for. There's other tools like 11 Labs, which actually help me from being the bottleneck. And that's one thing that you'll realize leaders are. They are the bottleneck of moving, enabling their teams to move forward. So again, we have to let go and give leadership to the people that we're working with, and give them like, hey, this is what this is the outcome that I'm looking for. You go figure out what that needs to, what that process looks like, and then I can, help you along the way if you need me. But that's what you got to do. So I had about 20 episodes that I had to record, intros to podcast interviews that I had already recorded. So Kerry, I noticed, you read my intro before before we started talking. I do that after the fact. So and let's say you gave me an intro for you, it might have changed, and it might be a little different based on the conversations. So what I do is I combine the intro that you gave me and combine the entire conversation that we had, and I say, hey, based on all of this information, can you create an intro description for this episode that we just recorded? So now it's more aligned with what the customer or what the listener is going to get out of the conversation.
Yeah, you can tell the difference between your production and mine.
Thank you. I mean,
Where
it takes
do you
time,
get the
right?
transcript? How do you get the transcript that you're talking about?
I'll talk to you about the transcript real quick. So once you have so that's how I'm using AI. So my bottleneck was I didn't have enough time to record these 1 minute, 60-second introductions. And I discovered this tool called 11 Labs. Now, 11 Labs is a really cool tool. It's been around for some time, and their product does text to speech, and you can clone your own voice in this platform by providing it with your audio. Since I've already recorded so many hundreds of hours of podcast episodes, I have really clean audio that I can submit to it. And then based on those audios, it was able, talking so fast, my mouth can't keep up. It was able to then create an audio voice for me that my VA, my producers, can then enter that generated text that we created through ChatGPT or OtterChat and plug it into this application, which then created the 60-second introductions that then she was able to plug into the episode. So again, cutting me out of the system, giving them tools that empower them and be able to, have that flow. So now the only time that I do spend in podcasting is when I'm having a conversation like this. So answer number 2, the question that you had, how do I get these transcripts? Now, we are using Zoom right now, and if you've been following up on the news, Zoom was actually in trouble. They were actually sued by during the pandemic because they were charging extra for transcription services. So now transcription is actually built in to all Zoom products because they're like, people who can't read, people who can't hear, they want to be able to read this transcription. So that's already built in.
Okay.
I went a step further. So if you look at your recordings in Zoom, I think you should be able to grab the transcripts from there. But I went a step further where I integrated my Zoom recordings into a tool called Otter.ai. Now, Otter.ai has also been using OpenAI or ChatGPT for the past 6 years, and they already had integration between Zoom and Otter. So I was like, hey, anytime the recording is done for my podcast, send it over to Otter. It automatically transcribes the entire conversation. Now, initially, we were copying that transcription and pasting it into ChatGPT. But now, since Otter is built on top of OpenAI as well, they've included their own version of ChatGPT inside of Otter. So now we simply go to the transcript, update the names of the people that were in the conversation, and Otter already knows my voice, so it automatically assigns my voice. But we update and add the name for the guest, and then we can ask Otter Chat to do all the things that we wanted to do against that transcript, and fast track that post production.
Wow, that's incredible.
I've dropped a lot of tools on you guys right now, so I
Yeah.
apologize.
I will be listening to this again myself and taking
Absolutely.
copious notes. This is great.
Fantastic. Yeah, Maritza tries to get us to use the tools, but it gets difficult sometimes. If she just does it, if she would just do it for us, then we wouldn't have to worry about it.
Right. So if she needs some kind of training, I'd be happy to train. My podcast producer is really amazing, and if we actually even create an SOP, like how we go through the initial interview process to the actual production, the recording, the production, the post production. Like we have a whole SOP around it, which keeps us on track.
Fantastic. Junaid, as we're getting close to wrapping this up, and again, really thank you for coming and giving these pearls of wisdom and providing value. That was one of the things that you and I kind of click with right away is that I think, and Peggy also, we all kind of operate from this sphere of doing well by doing good, and that is the thing that gets us motivated and keeps us going. So how best can someone get in touch with you? And we'll also make sure that we put your contact information on the episode and the headers and stuff. But if you could tell us how best to work with you, that'd be great.
Absolutely. So I'm on all the social media platforms, from YouTube to Facebook to LinkedIn to Instagram, at Super Junaid. But if you're looking for specific information around home studios, you can head on over to homestudiomastery.com. And my podcast is, like you mentioned, hacksandhobbies.com. And I'm working on a couple of books around studio process, studio production, video mastery, that will be introducing pretty soon on all of those websites.
Great. Peggy, any thoughts that you want to ask, or any final wrap-up thoughts?
I just really appreciate it. I appreciate your depth and warmth and skill at communicating all of this. And again, love your story, how you allowing yourself to be, I use the word calling all the time. You felt called, to work with technology. So I don't mean in a religious sense at all, but the sense of this is where I want to go, and then just how it just keeps evolving for you. I mean, it's such a valuable lesson in and of itself.
Thanks so much.
Besides all this other beautiful information about how we can all improve our podcast and then give value to our guests.
100%. 100%.
Absolutely. Junaid, again, thank you so much for being our guest. Folks that are tuning in, this has been Junaid Ahmed, the wizard of home studio here, being able to give us some enlightenment. And that gets to be my tagline, is that as you go through and whatever your endeavor as a leader, let your light shine. Until next time, see ya.